Imagine a morning, not an ordinary morning, but one that would change human history forever. You wake up, perhaps to a notification on your phone. You check your bank account and freeze. The numbers you see don't make sense, but there they are in black and white. A sum equivalent to approximately 71,000 US dollars has just appeared in your account. And at that very same moment, the same thing happens to every single person on the planet, to a shepherd in the mountains of Tibet, to a trader on Wall Street, to a newborn baby in Kyiv, and to their peer in Lagos. Absolutely everyone. This is the result of the greatest thought experiment. All the world's wealth has been calculated and divided equally. Let's look at the numbers to understand the scale. According to the latest estimates, for instance, from the Global Wealth Report by Credit Suisse, the total global wealth is about $580 trillion. The world's population is roughly 8.2 billion people. A simple division of one by the other gives us this magic number, about $71,000 per person. But what is this wealth? It's crucial to understand that it's not just cash and money in bank accounts. That liquid form makes up only a small fraction. The bulk of it is financial assets, such as stocks and bonds, about 55–60% of all wealth, and non-financial assets, primarily real estate and land, the remaining 40–45%. This means that to conduct our experiment, an invisible force would have had to not just redistribute money, but to sell all stocks, all factories, all homes and land, convert them into a monetary equivalent, and only then distribute it. We will return to the catastrophic consequences of this step a bit later. For now, let's emphasize how radical this change is. The average, or as economists say, the median net worth per adult in the world is only about $9,000. This means that half of the world's population has less than this amount. And for hundreds of millions of people living on less than a couple of dollars a day, the sum of $71,000 is an unimaginable fortune. It's more than they could have earned in their entire lifetime. So, the money is distributed. What happens next? The first few weeks would resemble a global celebration, a worldwide jubilee. For a vast portion of humanity, it would mean the end of debt bondage. The total amount of global household debt runs into the tens of trillions of dollars. In the US, for example, the average debt per person, including mortgages, car loans, and student loans, exceeds $100,000. For many, the newly received $71,000 would immediately go to paying off these debts. Imagine that collective sense of relief, of chains being cast off. For the poorest half of the planet's population, a golden age would begin. A family in rural Nigeria, where the annual income per capita is barely over $500, suddenly receives about $350,000 for a family of 5. They can build a sturdy house with running water, costing about $5,000 to $10,000, buy land for farming, pay for the best education for their children for life, and start their own small business. This isn't just an improvement in life, it's a leap across generations of poverty. World hunger, lack of access to clean water, and basic medicine would be solved almost instantly. This would be followed by the greatest wave of consumption in human history. People would rush to buy everything they had denied themselves their whole lives. Manufacturers of smartphones, home appliances, clothing, and of course cars would face unimaginable demand. But here, the utopia begins to show its first cracks. Let's take cars. Globally, about 85 to 90 million cars are produced each year. Now imagine that not 90 million, but say 500 million or even 1 billion people want to buy one. What happens? That's right, the factories can't meet that demand. And this brings us to the first horseman of the economic apocalypse, hyperinflation. Inflation is when prices rise. Hyperinflation is when they launch into space with such velocity that money turns into paper. Our scenario is the perfect storm to trigger it. Economists explain it through the quantity theory of money, which can be simplified to the formula, the amount of money multiplied by its velocity of circulation equals the price level multiplied by the volume of production. In our case, the amount of money, M, for everyone has sharply increased. The velocity of its circulation, v, has also skyrocketed as everyone rushes to spend. But the volume of production, q, has remained the same. For the equation to balance, the price level, p, must rise astronomically. This isn't just a theory. History has many examples. In the Weimar Republic in Germany in 1923, prices doubled every few days. People went to buy bread with wheelbarrows full of money, and by evening, that money was no longer enough. In Zimbabwe in 2008, inflation reached such heights that the government issued a 100 trillion Zimbabwe dollar banknote, which could barely buy a loaf of bread. In our global scenario, it would look like this. You go to a car dealership for a car that cost $30,000 yesterday, but the salesman who also has $71,000 and sees a line of hundreds of people just like you says the price is now $300,000. You go to the grocery store, and the farmer who grew these potatoes also got his money and decided he won't sell them for pennies anymore. The price per pound goes from $1 to 10 to 100. Your $71,000 begins to melt away before your eyes. In a month, you can't buy a car with it but a bicycle. In 2 months, only a pair of shoes. In 6 months, a cup of coffee. Money has lost its main function, to be a measure of value. But the devaluation of money is only half the problem. The second and far more terrifying problem is the great halt. Why do people work? Yes, for self-fulfillment and a sense of duty, but primarily to provide for themselves and their families. Our experiment destroys this basic incentive. Let's divide all professions into conditional groups. The first is essential but difficult and thankless jobs. These are sanitation workers who collect our trash. These are farmers and agricultural workers. These are miners who extract resources. These are long-haul truck drivers who transport goods. What would compel them to continue working in harsh conditions if they have an amount in their account equal to their salary for many years to come? The answer is nothing. The consequences would be immediate. Cities would drown in garbage, leading to outbreaks of disease. Food deliveries to stores would cease, causing famine. Power plants would shut down without coal and gas. The second group is highly skilled specialists, doctors, engineers, scientists, pilots. These people have spent 10 to 15 years of their lives on complex education to acquire unique skills. Now their financial reward has been equated with that of a person with no skills at all. Why would a future surgeon perform a 12-hour operation if he can just sit at home? Who will design new bridges, develop medicines, or fly airplanes? The system for training new specialists would also collapse. The modern world is built on incredibly complex supply chains. To produce a single smartphone, you need rare earth metals mined in Africa, chips manufactured in Taiwan, software written in the US, and assembly in factories in China. Our experiment severs every link in this chain simultaneously. The miners, factory workers, programmers, and merchant sailors, all of them lose their incentive to work. The global economy, this most complex organism, stops breathing. And now let's return to where we started, to the nature of wealth itself. We said that most of it is assets. What would happen if we tried to liquidate them? Selling all the shares of all the companies in the world simultaneously means their price would fall to zero. Why? A stock's value is, in essence, investors' belief in the company's future profits. But if all the workers have quit, the factories are idle, and customers have worthless paper instead of money, then future profits are zero. The entire global stock market, worth hundreds of trillions of dollars, would simply evaporate in a matter of hours. The same goes for real estate. How do you divide the Eiffel Tower or the Burj Khalifa equally? You can only sell them. But who would buy them? No one has sufficient funds, because now everyone is equal. The market value of these objects, like all office centers, luxury villas, and works of art, would become zero. This is the key takeaway. Wealth wasn't redistributed, it was destroyed. A huge part of global wealth is not physical objects, but a social consensus, a shared belief in their value. Our experiment shatters that belief, and trillions of dollars simply vanish like smoke. So what do we have in the end? A few months have passed, money is worthless, production is stopped. Technological civilization as we knew it has collapsed. What's next? An era of rebirth begins, but a brutal one. The new currency is not the dollar, but real goods and skills. It is the era of barter. A surgeon who knows how to operate becomes incredibly wealthy because he can trade his services for sacks of food from a farmer who has kept his farm going. An engineer who can fix a generator becomes a local king. And a former financial broker whose stock market skills are now useless might starve to death if he can't do anything with his hands. Inequality would return, and very quickly. But now it would be based on a person's real utilitarian value to the community's survival. New centers of power would form, perhaps around those who control sources of food, water, or energy. New local currencies would appear, IOUs, coupons, whatever works. But the path to restoring even a fraction of our former technological might would take centuries. We would lose the ability to produce computers, antibiotics, airplanes. Humanity would be thrown back in time. Our thought experiment, which began as a utopia of universal equality, ends in a dystopia, the collapse of civilization, and a return to the most primitive forms of existence. It proves that wealth is not a static pie that can simply be cut into equal slices. It is a complex, living ecosystem of production, innovation, incentives, and, most importantly, cooperation. By destroying the incentives for this cooperation, we destroy everything. And perhaps the main lesson is that the goal is not equality of outcome, which we so catastrophically achieved, but equality of opportunity, where everyone, regardless of their place of birth, has a real chance to realize their potential. This is a much more difficult, but also the only viable path to prosperity.